We're starting chapter 4 today. And with chapter 4, we're going to be going through and working on something called the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is a list of all of the accounts that a business can use. And what we do for that chart of accounts is we take each account and we list them in an order. And the order is going to vary depending on the type of an account. So we know our accounts classification of assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, expense, withdrawals. So what we do is each account is going to have a number. And the numbering system for our business right now, it's going to be a 3-digit numbering system. And for example, it would be 100, 200, 300, 400. As your business gets bigger, the account numbers will move into the thousands, meaning you'd have 1,000 or 2,000 because you have more room to add more accounts. Now, the numbering system is going to rate directly to what type of an account it is. Assets will always start with 100. Liabilities will start with 2. Owner's equity will start with 3. Revenue will start with 4. And expenses will start with 5. So when you look at an account number, the account number is going to clue you in to what type of an account it is going to be. So when I go through and list all of my expenses, expenses are going to be listed in alphabetical order. And remember, I told you expenses should be the easiest account to classify because it gives you the account classification right in the name. Advertising expense, rent expense, utilities expense. So the classification is there. So when we take a look at all of the various expense accounts that we have, we would go through and list them in alphabetical order. That makes pretty good sense. Would you agree? Now, liabilities. Liabilities are easy to identify as well because the definition of a liability is an amount that we owe. So therefore, liabilities always have the word payable in it. So when we go through it and we have all of our liability accounts, they're all going to start with accounts payable and then the name of whomever we owe. And all of our liability accounts are also going to be listed in alphabetical order. Okay. Now here's where it's a little bit different though, because I could go through and say, accounts payable Don's Quality Market. I could go through and say accounts payable Cole Cuskey. Who comes first, Don's or Cole Cuskey? What do you think?
Cole.
We hear Cole? Anyone think Don's? How do we alphabetize people? Last name. Does that make sense? So if it's a person, we alphabetize by last name. If it's a business, we would go by the first important word in the title. For example, D in Don's Quality Market. If you have a business where it starts with the word the, we don't usually alphabetize by the T and the. We'd alphabetize by the next important word that would go into it. The Great Escape. Have you guys eaten there before? At the mall, Great Escape, the Great Escape, they make the sandwiches. So typically you would alphabetize that by the G in Great Escape. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and do a chart of accounts. It's going to give us the list of accounts that the business has determined that they're going to do. We're going to list them on here. We have to put, excuse me, our classification headings on there, and I'll show you how to do that. And then the business will go through and operate and operate and operate. And then all of a sudden they may realize, you know what? I haven't been tracking my advertising. Or there may be another account that they would determine that they want to add. And this would be done after a while if the business has been operating. So down here we have a section that says new accounts. And what would happen is we would go through and we would add new accounts down here on the bottom after the business has been in operation. It's going to be a little bit weird today because when we go through and complete this assignment, we're going to create a chart of accounts. Then we're going to go through and create new accounts, and you would not do that within the same action. The other thing that we have down here on the bottom is going to be what is called a ledger. Okay, we have been going through and recording transactions, and those transactions we put in a journal. And on that journal, we go through and we say, all right, these are their two accounts that are being affected in double entry accounting. And then we go through and we make sure our debits and credits equal. But here's the hard part of where we're at right now in accounting. If I wanted to know how much money I spent in rent, what would I have to do? How would I find out how much money I spent on rent? You guys sleeping? Ben, what would you think I'd do?
Look at all the expense accounts.
So I'd have to look at each journal, and then on each journal I'd have to go through and look for my account rent expense. Now, how often do you pay rent? Once a month. So that's not too bad to find, because I could go through and just be like, oh, I usually pay it around this fund, and then I just have to look at each month and then go through and add it up. So rent's not too bad. What if I wanted to know how much I had in supplies? Do you affect supplies a lot with transactions within a month?
Yeah.
Would that be harder for you to know how much money you have in supplies? So what the other thing that we're going to be doing in this chapter is we're going to be transferring our information from the journal to a ledger, and the ledger is going to go through and give us a snapshot of how much we have in that account. And here's where it's important. Let's say that Cole over here is an accounts receivable account for me. And he calls me up and he says, hey, Mrs. Grassel, how much do I owe you? Should I be able to answer that instantaneously? I should be able to look it up and be able to tell him right away. I shouldn't have to say, oh, give me a minute. I have to look at each journal page and figure out what your balance is. So customers at any given point would want to know. The other thing is we need to know as a business how much money do we owe out to our accounts payable. So at any point I should be able to look at all of my accounts payable and say, hey, you know what? I owe out $4,000. Do I have enough cash to cover $4,000? Is that important for a business to know? So transferring our information into what our account ledgers here are going to go through and allow us to give information to make decisions. Recently, the school store just placed an order, and we just received 2 new types of sweatshirts. We're calling them the Raglan sweatshirts. I'll show you what they look like because I believe they're in the store ready to go. Right, Sarah? We tagged them all. There are 2 different types. There's a gray one that looks just like this, and then there's a red one. What you need to realize is the gray one is more of a female feminine fit, meaning it's going to be a little bit smaller on the sides. Is going to come in. You will also notice that the gray one has, when you look at the hood section here, it has a V cut out there. The red one goes straight across, but there's stitching there. And the red ones are going to run a little bit bigger than the gray ones. Okay, so we just went through and ordered, I believe we have 26 red ones and 25 gray ones in the store right now. So we have a bill probably sitting there around $1,300.
That's a daily question.
I know, but you were looking at the bill yesterday counting.
Oh, it's around $1,000.
Right around $1,000. So what happens is, for our business, when we receive these items, we have to make sure that we put it in that we owe our company how much for those shirts. We also got in stock yesterday water bottles, and then also our staff order came in yesterday, Cody. So we have lots of things coming in, so we need to know for our accounts payable how much money we are going to have to pay out on all of that. So for those of you working in the store today, which is Bryce, Justin, Kayla, and Dylan, just want you to be aware of those sweatshirts that are in there. Okay, we do have hats and mittens on order. Those should be coming in. They're going to be new knit hats that are going to say Thunder on it, and new knit mittens, so those will be coming in as well. So at any given point, the school store needs to know how much money do we owe out. Because if I have a bill for $1,000, How long is it going to take me to get money back for those? It'll take me a little bit, right? I can't just be like, all right, I can go pay the bill, because I have to wait for customers to buy those. And those sweatshirts right there are being priced for $30, and they're pretty soft on the inside too, right, Sarah? So they should feel pretty nice going in there. So when we look at our ledger here, we're going to be doing something called opening a ledger account. Opening a ledger account says right here, we're just going to put our account title, and then right here, we're going to put our account number. And again, remember, your account number is going to clue you into the type of an account it is: an asset, a liability, owner's equity, revenue, or expense. Okay? Okay, so here is our directions for application 4-1. The other thing I want to tell you is we are going to be making a chart of account right now for 4-1, and we'll have an application assignment 4-1, and you're not going to make another chart of account again until your test. So please remember, when you get ready for your test, and I'm looking at our test next week, Friday, that's my current plan projection date, review how to do a chart of accounts, because you're not going to have as much practice on that as you are going to have on the rest of the assignments that we're going to be doing. So 4-1 says, forms are given below. Your instructor will guide you through the following example. Clara Ross owns a service business called Ross Company, which uses the following accounts. So we have all of these accounts listed there, and you will notice that they are not listed in correct classification order. So you need to be able to identify what they are and how they go. Yay, that makes me happy. That's why we do our T account quiz all the time. So in the first instruction says, prepare a chart of accounts, arrange accounts payable and accounts receivable in alphabetical order. Also arrange expense accounts in alphabetical order. Use a 3-digit account number within the divisions by 10. I'll explain what that means. Okay, so let's do instruction number 1. The first thing we have to do is on our chart of accounts, right above where it says chart of accounts, we have to put the name of our business, which is Ross Company. Now, there are 2 sides to our chart of accounts. One side of our chart of accounts is called the balance sheet account. Okay, now think about it. What's the first thing that I taught you in accounting? What has to balance? No, before debits and credits, what did I teach you have to balance? Nope, before debits and credits. The accounting equation. So your balance sheet accounts are going to be your assets, your liabilities, and your owner's equity. Okay, so on the left-hand side, on the very top there, we're going to go ahead and type in balance sheet accounts. Now, when you hit enter, it's going to jump you to the right-hand side, but that's not how I like to complete my chart of accounts. I like to complete my balance sheet accounts and then go over to there. So just to give you a heads up, I'm going to go ahead and stay on the left-hand side. So what's our first account classification that fits under our balance sheets? The first word in your accounting equation is? Assets. Thank you. Somebody is awake up there. So assets is our first set of accounts, and all of our assets are going to start with the number 1. So what I have to do in parentheses is I'm going to put 100, and then I'm going to put the word assets. So what does that tell me? All asset accounts are going to be listed underneath here, and they're going to be starting with 100s. Now, how are assets listed? Assets are listed in order of liquidity. Big fancy word. Okay? Liquidity. Sounds like liquid, right? Liquid makes you think of science, but we need to pull it back into accounting and to finance. So what is liquidity? How easy you can turn it into cash. Okay? So what is the easiest account to turn into cash? Cash. Would you agree? So, because businesses always need to operate in a form of how quickly can they get money to be able to do things. So, cash is our easiest account to get to. So, we're going to go ahead and number that as 110 cash. Now, the reason that I don't start with 100 is maybe I could have multiple cash accounts. So, therefore, one cash account could be 110, another one could be 109 if I need to add it later.
I don't know a sales journal. Wait, my first page is supposed to be sales journal. Like theirs is, but mine's not.
Now, when I look here, I need to determine what is my next most liquid asset that could be easily turned into cash. Does anyone have an idea? Ooh. I like those ideas. So, sales is not an asset. So we can't put that one under there. Sales is what kind of account? Revenue. Okay. So when I take a look at my assets, I have cash, I have supplies, I have prepaid insurance, and then I have all of my accounts receivable. So what's easier to get cash out of, accounts receivable or supplies? Accounts receivable, because what is accounts receivable? Customers that have bought on account but haven't paid us yet. So how many accounts receivable accounts do I have? 2. Okay, so we have accounts receivable Tyler Link and accounts receivable Megan Alvarez. Who goes first? Because of why? Last name. Okay, so accounts receivable Megan Alvarez is going to be what number? Not 110, but 120. So 130 is going to be Tyler Link. Okay. Now, what are my other 2 types of an account? Assets. I have supplies and prepaid insurance. So, here's what I have. I have this insurance policy right here, and I have a box of office supplies. What's easier to get cash out of? My supplies. If I take a box of paper, could I sell it to you and get money?
Yes.
What do I have to do to get money out of my prepaid insurance account? I have to contact the business, I have to cancel my policy, and then they have to turn around and give me a refund. Which one takes more? The insurance. Okay, so my next account is going to be 140, and it's going to be supplies. And then 150 is going to be prepaid insurance. Now, this is what's going to kick your butt on the test for chapter 4. You're not going to remember this. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, I got it. And then you get there, and if you get one of them wrong out of order, what's going to happen to the rest of your chart of accounts? It's going to all be wrong. It's going to kick your butt. Okay? So, again, strongly recommending that you take a look at this the night before our test for next week. Okay, so do we have all of our asset accounts? So what's my next classification? Liabilities, and liabilities are going to not start with 1, they're going to start with 2. So I have to put in here in parentheses 200, and that's going to be liabilities. And how do I easily identify liabilities? It has the word payable. So how many payable accounts do I have? So I have accounts payable Shearer Supply, and I have accounts payable Mid-City Supplies. Who goes first? Because it's a name of a business, so we always alphabetize by the first word, okay? So my first account number is going to be 210, and that's going to be accounts payable Mid-City, and then I'm going to do 220, and that's going to be Shearer Supply. That's all my liabilities. What's my next classification? Owner's equity in 300s. Okay, so we have our capital account and we have our drawing account. I tell you that the classification for drawing is going to be a withdrawal, because what does drawing do to owner's equity? It makes it go down. When we make a chart of accounts, we're going to put both capital and drawing under the classification of owner's equity. The withdrawal account means it's a contra account to it, meaning it's only there to take away from it. We always list capital first. So 310 is going to be your capital account of Clara Ross Capital. And then 320 is going to be Clara Ross Drawing. So what we've done now on the left-hand side of our chart of accounts is we have listed our assets, our liability, and our owner's equity, which is our accounting equation, which is called our balance sheet accounts. Now on the right hand side, we have to go through and determine our income statement accounts. And think about it. The whole point of a business is to make money, right? And when we went through and looked at financial statements, we had to go through and compare your revenue and expenses. Your revenue and your expenses is what you use to determine if you've made money or lost money. So the heading that's going to go on the top right-hand side is going to say income statement accounts. There are two classifications that we put under our income statement accounts. One is going to be revenue, and what number is revenue going to start with? 400. How many revenue accounts do we have? If I look at all of my accounts, how many revenue accounts are there? One, and what is it? Sales, and that is it. So sales is going to be the account number of 410. Then I'm to my last classification. My last classification is going to be expenses, and they're going to start with what number? 500. Okay, so 510 is my first expense account. Expenses are listed in what order? Alphabetical. So then you have to look at all of those expense accounts and figure out which one comes first. Dylan, what one comes first? Yeah, so I'm going to do 510, automobile expense. My next account number, because we're increasing by tens, is going to be 520. And what's going to be 520, Sarah? Okay, now this is where people are like, insurance expense, how do we use that? Let me tell you something. Never, ever journalize a transaction using the account title insurance expense. Don't use it. I have a whole chapter where we're going to talk about how we use insurance expense, but as of right now, just know, do not journalize transactions using insurance expense. We're going to learn about that later. Okay? So my next account number is going to be 530. And 530 is which one? Miscellaneous or supplies?
Miscellaneous.
Oh, good alphabetizing. 540 is going to be?
Rent expense.
Now, one of the things that is a little bit easy because Applia only gives you a certain number of choices. You're like, okay, whatever, I can figure it out. But if you were writing it on a piece of paper, would you have that automatic pop up to know which one is what order? Not so much. So Applia made it a little bit easier for you. But here is our chart of accounts. Left-hand side is our balance sheet accounts. Right-hand side is our income statement accounts. You will notice that all of our accounts now have an account number. So, yay, we're in business. We just operated for a whole year. That was a big fast forward. And after we operated for a whole year, we realized that, hey, we do a lot of things where we need to mail things. I think it would be really good, instead of putting it in miscellaneous, that we keep track of our shipping expense by going through and creating an account called postage expense. Also, I want to keep track of my utilities. How much do I spend on my lights, on my water, and on my heat? And take that out of miscellaneous because that allows me to make different decisions. If at the end of a fiscal year or a period of time, I go through and I have $10,000 in miscellaneous, I don't know what that is. I can't make any different decisions. But if I go through and I see that I spent $7,000 in postage, does that allow me to make different decisions? It does. So the business has been in operation, and now we're going to go down here and we're going to go through and create some additional accounts that are going to fall under there. So when we go through to add them, one second. There are going to be two sides that we have to fill in. On the left-hand side, we're going to put our account number, and on the right-hand side, we're going to put our account title. So that's going to be the heading. Now, our directions tell us postage expense, then it tells us utilities expense. So I need to do postage expense first. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on the right-hand side for postage expense. Now, I need to determine what is my account number for postage expense? Okay. How do we determine the order of our expenses? How do we determine that miscellaneous was here and then that was rent? Alphabetical. Where does postage expense fit in there? Between miscellaneous and rent, correct? So, what we have to do is we have to take a look at our account number and we say, all right, it goes between 530 and 540. So the account number I'm going to give it is going to be 535. I'm going to go right in the middle. The other account that we need to do is going to be utilities expense. And again, expenses are added in alphabetical order. So when I look at utilities expense, where does that go in order? At the end. Okay, I have room. Should I put it at 555?
No.
I can go a whole increment of 10. Would you agree? So my account number for utilities expense is going to be 560. My last direction, right here it says, using the accounting form below, open up cash. Okay, well, to open up cash, this is what you need to do. Right here you put the account title. Well, what's the account we're opening? Cash. And then over here you put the account number. And what is cash's account number that we just made? 110. There, you just open up an account for cash in a ledger that we'll be using. Go ahead, check that answer. And try that on your own.